Welcome to the Book Bistro Author Chat. I am your host, Tanya Lilly, and joining me is Dr. Tasha Faruqui. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You did. Very good job.
Um, so welcome, and I appreciate you taking the time to discuss your memoir with us. I would like to, let's see, we are going to chat about Keep Your Head Up. It's your story of chasing joy in the face of grief. And I have to say that it was very emotional, but I am so glad that I read it. It was very enlightening as well. So let's get started. Would you like to start by telling me a little bit about yourself and telling our group about yourself?
Of course. So my name is Tasha Faruqui, and I actually live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a pediatrician, and I originally am from Tanya's hometown of Dowagiac, Michigan, is where I grew up. And I grew up with my father being a small town physician and wanted to follow in his footsteps, and went on to medical school, and then met my husband, and we had three daughters, and then my middle daughter has a rare genetic condition. And that led us to living in many different places, but ultimately landing in Cincinnati in the time of having her and being a practicing pediatrician. Her health took a shift about 3 years ago. And in that time, I've really started teaching residents and those going into medicine, as well as just becoming really public in our life of how we live life while having a daughter that is not only medically complex, but now is in hospice. And so that was really the litmus for writing this book. This book was published recently, September of 2025. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me and a little bit about the book.
Okay. Much of the beginning of the book is sharing your growing up. And I was curious, you talk about your family, your parents, and I was curious why you included that and how they felt about that.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. Many times when I tell people that, I wrote a book about being a parent of a child with medically complex issues, as well as one that is now in hospice, it could have taken many different directions as far as the layout of the book. Do I start with her birth? Do I start more recent and then work your way back? And ultimately, what I felt was really important was the journey of truly knowing who I am, but who I am is really because of who I was. And who I was had everything to do with how I was raised. And I think that if you think of anybody that is a parent, so much of how we were raised shapes your lens and how you parent. And I could not separate how I parent from my past. And so much of my foundation was the way that I grew up, the way that I was raised, and then also the ideas that were kind of my foundation. They became my subconscious, as many people have that with their own families and their parents. And so I really felt like it was important. That also really described my grief. I think it's hard to know what parts of my life I was grieving if you never knew my dreams. And I think to know my dreams, you have to know what led me to have those dreams. And a lot of that had to do with my childhood and my upbringing. As far as, how my family felt about that, I will say that when I wrote the book, had the manuscript, and did the reviews, I had never showed them the book. So they actually did not know what was going to be in the book until they read it themselves. And I did not give them an early reader copy. My husband had read the book, and my oldest daughter, they were both ones that had read chapter by chapter, each edit, every bit of the nitty gritty. And I did want to make sure that I had their blessings I tried with my best intention to truly think about how would my family feel about what I'm writing. I tried to also be very honest and authentic to how I experienced it because it is my story and it is my life, and I didn't want to alter anything. And so I tried my best to be honest, and I did tell my family that, I was writing about their lives and that I was writing about some things that were really personal. So they knew that, but they didn't know details. I actually don't know how they feel about the details. I have really just kind of bypassed that. And what I do know, which I think is the most important, is they have been so supportive of the book. And while we haven't broke down like what part hurt you the most or how do you feel, what I have seen is that they are just so proud of how honest that I've been. And I am honestly surprised and proud of them. I think that in my mind, I was really worried, but I knew that sharing this story meant writing about really hard things and doing some really scary things with just being so honest about not only my parents' flaws, but my own flaws. And I think that that also helped tell the story in the sense of it wasn't about pointing fingers. It's really about showing everybody's vulnerability and how none of us are perfect and how life is a journey that we are truly all still learning. And I am still learning. And I'm so proud of my parents for evolving as parents, even though I'm an adult now and they're grandparents. So I am thrilled with how supportive they've been. And I am also surprised that I haven't gotten any backlash from them. And, if they do have hard feelings about it, they haven't said anything to me. And I think that that must have taken some courage to have some reservations that haven't been public.
Yeah. I think that's what drew me so much into the book was that you were so honest and so open, and you did talk about some really difficult things in your life, but it just made it feel so much more real, and it really helped the reader feel as much as we can what you were going through. So I think that was a really good choice to um but it surprised me when I first started reading it. So
I'm sure. And I think that for people that have an idea about our family, which honestly is much of our town, just growing up in a small town, I I I think that it probably took a lot of people by surprise. But I also think for the people who thought they knew our family, I think what the story does is make us more relatable because I think so much of my life, like now I'm learning many people feel this way. You feel like an outsider. And I think that there was just such a separation of, our family compared to other people in our town. And a lot of it had to do with my dad being a physician in a small town. It just created a different dynamic, a different type of relationship with our community. And it definitely made, me feel like the spotlight was on us many times. And so much that I felt like we had to suppress or kind of keep hidden. And much of writing the book was kind of like a liberation of not only the things that I was keeping in being a parent, but the things that I had been keeping when I was a kid. And so a lot of that felt very freeing, and I'm glad that I got it out. But I do, if anybody's listening was hurt, I do feel bad that that was never my intention. And so if there is family members that feel bad, it was part of exposing myself, not so much exposing them.
all right. Well, growing up in that same town, of course, we all have different journeys, and but I think that helped because I could identify. I mean, your dad took my tonsils out, so
Exactly.
what
Exactly.
it
Like
was.
many of the town. And I think that you have an idea of what people are like. But I think that, as I go through this journey of life and even being a pediatrician and having the privilege of working with families, we all have struggles and we just don't talk about them. And that doesn't mean that if you're struggling that you have to talk about it publicly. I want to be very clear about that because that's one thing that I don't want anybody to assume that, anybody that's going through something like this has to be this public. But I do think that it goes to show you that if I can put myself out there, that people realize that at some point in everybody's life we're struggling. And so I think that that can unify us instead of make us feel more separate.
Yeah. So, you raised some poignant issues regarding the healthcare and health insurance in your book, and that surprised me because you're in the medical system, and I have experienced a lot of difficulties, and I gained a lot of knowledge through what you were telling me. I just wondered why you decided to include that. Was it to help others, to help through, to just get through the system? It can be really difficult.
I think a lot of what I shared as my perspective of the medical journey actually had to do with my own surprise. So while I have been trained to be a physician and have gone through the process, what dawned on me is I did not realize how broken the system was, even though I have been trained to be a part of it. And I don't think that I would have known how broken it was until I actually had the lived experience of, either having Soraya and going through her journey, or even myself in my own health journey. I think that now I know more because of her. And so in sharing that, it's in my own shock. And this whole time that I've been living these obstacles, I kept thinking, I never knew it was like this. I never knew it was this hard. And the same thought came back to me of, if I'm a physician and my husband's a physician and we didn't know it was this hard, how do other people know how to navigate the healthcare system? And so a lot of the sharing had to do with my own disbelief that things could be so hard, and then also my own disbelief in the communication between patients and physicians, as well as physicians to physicians, that going on the journey kind of exposed those things for me. And I wanted others to know how hard it is, even if you're a physician, that this isn't just the journey of the layperson, that even when you are a part of the system, you can still be hurt by the system and it can still be challenging. I think there's other parts of the book that I highlighted and how it's such a privilege to be a doctor. Like I knew that we needed to lobby Congress to get things passed, and but even yet it takes so much work to get the care that you really need.
Yeah, and I appreciated that because, like I said, there's so many people that are struggling to get what they actually need. And my granddaughter is thinking about, she's a junior in high school and she has on her radar to be a doctor. Her dad is a doctor, her grandparents are both doctors, and that's what she wants to do. And I told her she has to read your book because I think it's Soraya's story, but I think you bring so much else into it. And I think for somebody that might be going into that field, it's eye-opening, you know, that it'll help others, you know, on that.
I do think that there is a lot in common with, the themes of my book and other people wanting to pursue medicine. And I think there is, the impact of how I was raised and my upbringing, but there's also the impact of that desire and drive to be a physician that many future physicians fall into, which is this idea of tunnel vision, delayed gratification, and almost missing out on life as you are trying so hard to get to this goal, but that goal may not equal happiness. And I think that that is a tough lesson. And I think that that is a valuable lesson that anybody, no matter if our journeys are similar or not, can relate to if you want to be a physician, because it is such a long road. It's a long road. I mean, that's just like that's a fact. So that's not an opinion. It takes a long time to get there, but then also there is no there. And I think that's also an important fact, that there isn't this finish line, and there never was. And I think that's what I try to break down in the story of what my dreams were and what they are now, and how different that is.
So another thing that really moved me is when you talked about the white light, and that it gave me chills because I think at some point we all have that. There's something more. There's something beyond where we are right now. Would you describe that for our audience?
Yes. And so, I think that the things that I've described in the book that are kind of like greater than ourselves are truly, I just want to say non-denominational. So this isn't necessarily, an attachment to any type of specific faith. But what I do know is in my most broken moments, and one of those moments was described in the book, and it is, one that I was really ashamed and embarrassed to share for a very long time, um, where I was just breaking down, holding Soraya. This is when she was a baby, and I could not get her to sleep. And in retrospect, she had probably a lot of pain and a lot of things going on that she couldn't articulate. But I knew in that moment that I could not console her. And as someone who is rocking nonstop, thinking about what does my baby have? Something is wrong, but I don't know what. What journey will we be on? And I am trying to envision a long road or maybe a short road of her not making it. And I am just telling myself in that moment, like, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I give up. Like, either I'm going to die or she's going to die, but I can't do this. And I am pleading with God, and I am praying, but I'm also like half angry and desperate. And in that moment, I like need a break, and I realize that I can't console her anymore. And so I put Soraya down. I get my husband, but before I get him, I'm just breaking down as I'm talking to him, and we are watching Soraya on our monitor. And as I am crying and we're looking, there is this white light that is looks like it's like almost stroking her in her crib, and she's slowly calming down, and it's long enough for both of us to see, and we're like, what is that? And in that moment we did record it, and we recorded it and we watched it, and after she had fallen asleep, that light was still there. The light was actually still there in the morning, and all we knew was this is something greater. Is it an angel? Is it God? It's something greater than us. And we really didn't share that story with anyone other than our parents, mostly because I didn't know what to make of it. You get nervous about people thinking that you're crazy or you're just seeing things, and that was really the purpose of recording it. It wasn't to exploit it or send it to everybody we knew, but it was something that was very sacred, that made us feel safe. But it was also a reminder that this life is not just about what I'm going through, that there is something bigger. And throughout the book there are more signs, for lack of a better word, of this bigger thing, that is more than the pain that I'm enduring, or that Soraya is enduring, or those that are watching her decline are going through. That there's something bigger than that.
Yeah, and I remember reading Soraya has had some experiences. One that pops into my mind is with your uncle.
Yes, she we were sitting at the table, and I have a uncle that is my mom's brother, and he actually passed away when I was 12. So Soraya never got to meet him, but he is my most favorite uncle. So when my mom was a single mom, we lived with this uncle for a little while, and I mean, he really helped, support my mom and helped raise my sister and I, and was a part of the courtship of my stepdad and my mom, and moving to Michigan. And one of the things that about him is he was a smoker, and so he was a chain smoker. And back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, I don't think we really knew all the impact of smoking. But he had a sudden heart attack at a very young age of 42, and one of the things that I've always been sad about is my kids never got to meet him. And one day at dinner, we were talking, and Sarai was like, "Your uncle is so kind." And it's like, we have so many uncles. I had no idea who she was talking about. So I was trying to figure out who she was talking about. And she's like, "No, I'm talking about your mom's brother, the one that smokes nonstop." And I'm like, "And that's what he did. He was a chain smoker." And I'm like, you can see him. She's like, "Yeah, he's so nice." I'm like, "He is so nice." She's like, "And he's funny." And I'm like, "Yes." And she's like, "Well, I just want you to know he's partying." And while that seems like such a like random thing to say, it's actually very specific, because when he used to put me to sleep when I was like 3 and 4 years old, he always used to say, "When everybody's asleep, I'm going to wake you up and we're going to go party all through the night while everybody else is sleeping." And it would be like our thing that we would talk about. And so she was already able to name that. And so it was also this like reassurance that she's going to be taken care of. That's how I interpret it. And I love that she has that connection.
Yeah. Um, it made me remember an experience where right after my father passed away, who also was a chain smoker, I was driving to work at 6 a.m. There's no cars on, it's dark, and I could smell cigarette smoke. There was
Smell.
nothing around. And I just started crying and said, "Okay, Dad, you're riding with me," because how do you explain it? And so when I was reading that, I have to admit, I cried and cried because it just brought back all those memories for me too. So,
That
so
gave me
there,
chills. I love
yeah. So, um, this one I had to Google.
that.
Mama Mary, what an incredible person. Um, and you've had a really strong relationship with her, and she's
Yes.
helped you through. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. And no need to Google Mama Mary. I can tell you all about her. She is in Grand Rapids, and I met her, goodness, it was early college. And it was actually because one of my friends from Dowagiac, who was living in Grand Rapids, was having a bachelorette party. And she lived in Grand Rapids. And her bachelorette party was to have some friends over at her apartment and do psychic readings with tarot cards. And so it's been something I had never done. And to be completely honest, something that I've almost like avoided. When you think about religion and faith, I just wanted to keep that very separate. So I was very resistant and skeptical, and not quite sure about the situation. But nonetheless, participated because it felt safe in a group. And in that time, she had shared with me things that nobody else in the room knew about. And, one of those things was even the fact that my mom was married before. And so I think many people in our town didn't know that, or I hadn't even shared with my friends. And so she was able to describe things about my biological father that nobody knew. And that was when I knew that, okay, like she has a connection. But the other thing about Mama Mary is that she works in light. Like everything about her is loving. There's nothing that seems like voodoo or witchcraft or darkness, which was really a fear, or this idea that I had when I thought about what it's like to work with tarot readers. She was just very loving and endearing, which is honestly how she got the name Mama Mary. And from that moment on, I, had her contact information. And then fast forward several months, my sister was going through a really tough breakup, and I just wanted to give her some peace of mind. And I was like, "You know what? I know what I'll do. I'll drive you to Grand Rapids. You got to meet Mama Mary. She's going to give you peace of mind because I know you're going to be okay. But you need to know from something greater than ourselves that you will be okay." And, sure enough, she gave her some great reassurance. And from that moment on, both my sister and I would say, every couple months, if something came up, we were feeling stuck or just needed some reassurance, we would contact her. And, I will say that you can't give people a percentage, but I would say about 90 to 95% of the things that she has told us has been spot on. That being said, we all have free will. So like, you can completely defy what she guides and, you can be the winner of that. But she's just been a part of our lives, for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
So a long time. And she is still doing readings and she's still part of my life. And while I don't do readings as often, she's become family and I talk to her all the time. And in that, what I didn't know then that I know now is that she actually had a medically complex daughter. And I never knew that as I was going to her until much later. And her daughter died not that long ago. And now we have this other connection that she had kept very separate. And now it's like we're almost peers in this journey. And she's just this warm presence and slowly has gotten to know like my cousins and extended friends and family that have all utilized her services, but just an amazing human.
Yeah. I I I was so interested in it, so I got on Google and found that she was in Grand Rapids. And I'm like, oh, okay. And because I didn't have a lot of background information on that type of thing either, so I wanted to learn more about it because it certainly wasn't a theme in your an underlying theme in your story.
Yes. And
So
for anyone looking for her, it's taurustreasures.com is her website. But I know that she's open to connecting.
okay, you have other children,
Yes.
and I know that when you have an illness in the family or you're going through this, it affects the whole family. So how are your other girls doing? Your other children?
Yeah. And I think the reason that I bring up siblings, it's again, the things that I've shared have been mostly from my own humble experience of like I did not realize how much it would impact the siblings. It was something that I never saw when I was in training. I shouldn't say I never saw. I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't know it was happening. Clearly it was happening all around and it's not part of medical education to think about the siblings. I'm hoping that is changing and I think that with books like this and sharing stories like this and getting the word of what the sibling experience is like, that will be changing. But for the other two, I have learned that their experiences are so different than the parent experience, and their experience is so different and non-dependent on the health of Soraya. And what I mean by that is if she's really sick, it doesn't mean that's when the siblings are the worst. And if she's doing well, that doesn't mean the siblings are doing well. They're all navigating their own journey and it can be completely separate from one another. I also think that I had the idea that all sibling experiences are similar, and I think that that is also not true. My oldest is a junior in high school, and I think that her experience is very different than my youngest, who's a fifth grader, and she's 11 currently, and so she's younger than Soraya. And so just the birth order in itself, I think, really impacts how they're doing and how they process. My youngest came into the world with having a sibling with special needs, so she almost like didn't know anything different, whereas my oldest can remember what life was like before she really knew that Soraya was going to have a medical journey that would last, the length of her life versus something that we were trying to fix that we could kind of get quote unquote back on track. My oldest definitely has had more struggles with just feelings of resentment and anger in not having the life that she wanted or not having the sibling that she wanted. And I think my younger one may not have those types of feelings, but just copes with things differently. She compartmentalizes and kind of holds things in, where my older one definitely expresses herself, but in a way that really comes from anger. And so I think that, the reason why I included that is I think that that needs to be part of the narrative, that not all siblings are, and it's not that they both are compassionate, empathetic siblings that truly love Soraya, but they're not one dimensional, where I think that sometimes in the sibling story, they're portrayed as the third parent, like they're the responsible ones. They're the ones that need to step out and they need to take responsibility and they need to be a caregiver. And that's something that I don't want to be a part of their story, because they are definitely their own people and they don't owe us, like myself and my husband, anything, or really their sister, unless they want to do that. And I think that each person is different.
Yeah. Um, since your book came out, you've had some information on a diagnosis finally. Can what will you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think that much of the story, actually, throughout the whole book, we had no diagnosis. And I'll be honest that I thought we would never have a diagnosis. And if there's one thing that I felt like I accepted throughout the book and throughout my life, is like, okay, well, we'll never figure out what this is. And it's like things sometimes happen when you least expect it. And so we were able to identify the gene that she has. I should say the gene deletion that she has, and that is something called TAOK1. And because it's something that is rare and because it's something that's new, we don't know a whole lot about it other than that is the likely gene. We know that there are 50 cases in the world, but for whatever reason, her case is the most severe. And what we've gathered is that is because that deletion is much larger than the other 49 people. We also know that her gene, where the deletion is, impacts another four genes that we actually don't know what the function of those four genes are. And so that might be why her clinical picture is so much more severe. But there is comfort in at least knowing that we know the gene, at least one of the genes, and we also know that it was a spontaneous mutation. And, for many people that means something, and for many it might not. But I do think that something that I struggled with is, did she get the gene from me? And of course, it wouldn't be like my fault, but it's something in the back of my mind that I always wondered, which one of us gave it to her. And
Mhm.
it is kind of a relief that it's neither of us. It was just something that happened. And I think that there is some comfort in that, even though there's at this time no cure or no way to kind of stop what's happening.
Um, I have browsed your blog and Instagram because I am truly want to follow the story. I and keep up on how you and your family, the Faruqi Five, are doing. But others might want to do that too. So let's see. I think I have your blog for others that might want to follow that story. And you're also on Instagram. So
Yes.
I have that too as well. And then I thought, and I couldn't, I tried to look it back up and I couldn't find it, but part of your proceeds from the book are going to go to charities. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, all of the proceeds will be going to charity. And so I think the confusing part is I have it split between Make a Wish as well as Cincinnati Children's. Now, that being said, there have been separate book events where I do give to other nonprofit organizations. Another organization that's near and dear to me is the George Mark Pediatric Respite House in California. And so if there are organizations that pop up, that's where they'll go. But for the most part, they're going to Make a Wish in Cincinnati Children's. I know the bigger mission of this book was really to give back, and so that's how that happened.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing your story. And I hope I know that some people in the book club have not read it yet, but I hope that this will inspire them, give them, because it's not just for parents going through, it's for everyone. No matter where you're at in life, you can learn and take something from this book and grow from it. And that's what I thought was so special about it. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much and
Thank you.
joining us and sharing your story, and prayers for your family.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.